There was a time when Earth did not belong to humans, nor to dinosaurs. It was the age of small yet colossal beings, the six-legged monsters that could fly, crawl, and hunt like perfect biological machines. Dragonflies the size of eagles, centipedes as long as cars, scorpions as large as hunting dogs, and spiders that spun webs big enough to trap bats in mid-air. They truly existed, ruling the skies, the land, and the seas for hundreds of millions of years. It's hard to imagine what our planet would look like if those giants had survived and continued to evolve. More than 500 million years ago, during the Cambrian period, Earth had only just begun to experiment with complex life. In the heart of the ancient ocean, bizarre creatures swam through murky waters, and among them was one that made everything else seem tiny and pitifully weak. Its name was Anomalocaris, meaning the strange shrimp. But forget the image of a small shrimp, because this predator was one of the first creatures to truly dominate the seas. Anomalocaris reached nearly 40 centimeters in length, a figure that may sound modest. But in an age when most creatures were no larger than a finger, it was a true giant. Its body resembled an alien war machine. 2 front limbs shaped like hooks, a circular mouth lined with interlocking hard plates forming a perfect crusher, and a pair of compound eyes that could detect the smallest movement beneath the ancient waves. Imagine a trilobite, the common creature of that time, crawling slowly along the seafloor, when suddenly the shadow of Anomalocaris looms overhead. A swift strike from its curved claws and you become lunch in an instant. What makes Anomalocaris remarkable is not only its size, but also its role as a pioneer in the history of predation. Before fish ever appeared, it had already invented the art of attack, using eyes to locate, limbs to seize, and its mouth to crush. For the first time in evolution, nature had created a true predator, a symbol of power and biological selection. Many scientists call it the first killer of Earth. But Anomalocaris is fascinating not only for its might, but also for the way it puzzled scientists for decades. Its body structure was simple yet terrifying, a long, flexible torso moving with wave-like side flaps that allowed it to swim swiftly and gracefully. Its enormous compound eyes, each containing more than 30,000 tiny lenses, gave it the ability to detect prey from astonishing distances. This was a leap in the evolution of vision, a modern pair of eyes in a primitive world. Picture the scene. Under the dim light filtering through Cambrian waters, hundreds of tiny creatures drift aimlessly. From the darkness, Anomalocaris darts forward like a biological arrow, its curved claws snapping around its prey, body coiling, then vanishing into the mud. Everything happens within seconds, and thus began Earth's very first predator-prey cycle. And as the oceans came alive with endless chases, Earth was preparing to welcome new giants. For when creatures like Anomalocaris had mastered the deep sea, some of their relatives would soon leave the ocean, crawl onto land, and become the giant sea scorpions, the next monsters in the chain of domination. After Anomalocaris disappeared from the oceans, nature did not leave the throne of power empty for long. From the small bottom dwellers of the sea, a new lineage began to evolve, donning thick armor, wielding massive claws, and bearing the cold gaze of a killer. They were the sea scorpions, and among them Pterygotus was the undisputed ruler, the true monster of the ancient seas. More than 420 million years ago, in the late Silurian and early Devonian periods, the ocean was home to many strange creatures, but none could compare to Pterygotus. With a length that could reach 2.5 meters, roughly the height of an adult human, it was considered the largest sea scorpion ever to exist. Pterygotus resembled a modern scorpion in form, but its size rendered any comparison meaningless. Its entire body was covered in a chitinous shell as hard as steel, segmented and flexible, allowing it to swim swiftly and even crawl onto land during hunting phases. At the front were powerful claws tipped with sharp, curved hooks, while its long whip-like tail could lash violently for defense or attack. Each time it moved, the seabed mud stirred up in cloudy trails, like the wake of an ancient hunting vessel. The structure of its eyes was equally astonishing. Each eye contained thousands of tiny lenses, granting it an almost panoramic view of its surroundings. With such vision, no ancient fish could escape its pursuit. Scientists believe that Pterygotus could ambush, surge forward at incredible speed, seize its prey with crushing claws, and grind it into fragments with its mouth. In an ocean where most creatures measured only a few dozen centimeters, Pterygotus was an invincible terror, with no true rival. Surprisingly, though it lived underwater, it could still crawl onto land for short periods. In the ancient ecosystem, Pterygotus was not just a predator, but a symbol of evolutionary power. It showed that creatures once hidden beneath the seafloor had begun to learn how to conquer a new realm, the shores and the land itself. From this lineage of sea scorpions, their later descendants would eventually leave the oceans behind, carrying with them the instincts of hunters and the deadly claws, becoming terrestrial scorpions, a species that still survives today. But before that could happen, nature was preparing for another monumental leap. On land, the air was becoming denser, richer in oxygen than ever before. Plants began to grow taller, and the skies opened up for the first creatures capable of flight. After the rulers of the deep seas, it was now time for the monsters of the sky to appear. Gigantic insects that even Pterygotus would have to yield to. After hundreds of millions of years in which the oceans had been ruled by predators like Pterygotus, Earth slowly changed. Vegetation grew taller, spreading across vast swamps, while the air became humid and filled with more oxygen than ever. This was the Carboniferous period, an age when the skies came alive, and the first rulers of the air were not birds, but insects. Among them, one species reached a level of greatness never seen before. Meganeura, the giant dragonfly, the lord of the prehistoric skies. Imagine a creature with a wingspan of 1 meter, gliding slowly between towering trees as high as buildings, its large eyes gleaming under the pale blue light, and its transparent wings humming softly like blades slicing through air. With the size of a small eagle, Meganeura was truly a symbol of natural power, a being both beautiful and terrifying to behold. Though it looked somewhat like modern dragonflies, Meganeura differed in every way. Its body was dozens of times larger, its muscles so powerful that each wing beat could create a small gust strong enough to ripple through the forest canopy. But what made it truly fearsome was its pure predatory instinct. Meganeura didn't fly for beauty, it flew to kill. Its eyes contained tens of thousands of tiny lenses, allowing it to detect the slightest motion of prey from a great distance. When another insect, or even a small creature the size of a human hand, entered its sight, Meganeura would dive at terrifying speed, hook-like legs snapping shut, leaving its victim no chance of escape. Scientists believe that Meganeura was the first true predatory insect to dominate the skies. It fed on smaller insects, larvae, and possibly even tadpoles or young amphibians. With its ability to fly swiftly, react precisely, and unleash incredible muscular power, no other creature of its era could match it. You could say that Meganeura was the bird of prey of a world without birds, a six-legged warrior with mighty wings. What allowed Meganeura to reach such extraordinary size was the atmospheric oxygen level of the time, nearly double that of today, about 35%. The oxygen-rich air made the limited tracheal breathing system of insects far more efficient, allowing their bodies to grow beyond normal limits. If Meganeura existed in today's atmosphere, it would quickly suffocate. Its massive body simply couldn't exchange enough oxygen to survive. If Meganeura was the ruler of the skies, then Paleodictyoptera were the pioneers that first opened the world to flight. More than 300 million years ago, when Earth was shrouded in the humid, heavy air of the Carboniferous period, vast forests of giant ferns and towering trees spread across the land, and the skies came alive with thousands of delicate winged creatures gliding above them. Amid that moist haze, insects with wings as wide as a human hand floated slowly through the air. These were Paleodictyoptera, the ancient ancestors of today's mayflies. By modern standards, these creatures were true giants. Some species had wingspans reaching 55 centimeters, about 22 inches, larger than a pigeon. Their long, slender bodies were covered in faint, iridescent scales. Their wings beat slowly and gracefully, making them appear like hovering ghosts among the towering trees. With such an appearance, Paleodictyoptera possessed the elegance of modern insects, but also an otherworldly mystery, as if born from another planet. Interestingly, unlike sky warriors such as Meganeura, Paleodictyoptera were gentle, plant-eating creatures. Their diet consisted mainly of pollen, spores, and sap from the earliest gymnosperms, the ancient trees that blanketed the planet at the time. With their specialized mouthparts, capable of piercing bark and sucking liquid, they played an essential role in the ancient ecosystem, acting as Earth's very first pollinators. Fossils show that Paleodictyoptera were once the primary prey of Meganeura. One can imagine the prehistoric aerial battles, a giant dragonfly darting through the air, its wings slicing gusts of wind, while huge mayflies desperately swerved and fluttered among the trees. But against the deadly precision and speed of Meganeura, few could hope to survive. Astonishingly, Paleodictyoptera had not just 2 pairs of wings, but 3. The extra pair, located on the front of the thorax, wasn't used for flight, but for stability and control, allowing them to hover gracefully in mid-air. This unique feature made them among the very first true flying insects, ancestors of all later thin-winged species, from dragonflies and butterflies to mayflies. But the golden age of Paleodictyoptera did not last forever. As Earth's climate began to dry during the late Carboniferous and early Permian periods, the swampy forests disappeared, along with their main food sources. Their bodies shrank, from half a meter to only a few centimeters, and eventually they vanished from history. If the prehistoric skies belonged to wings, then the ground, especially the damp soil beneath the fern forests, was ruled by crawling creatures. In that steamy, shadowed world lived a being with dozens of legs, armor hard as steel, and an endlessly long, coiling body weaving through layers of decaying leaves. This was Euphoberia, the giant centipede that once dominated the forest floor of the Carboniferous period. At first glance, Euphoberia looked strikingly similar to modern centipedes, a body divided into dozens of segments, each with a pair of small legs, long antennae on its head, and sharp spines running along its back. But the difference lay in its size. While today's centipedes rarely exceed 25 centimeters in length, Euphoberia could grow up to 30 centimeters, and in some species, even more than half a meter. It may not sound that large, but imagine a creature of that size crawling across your legs in a damp, shadowy forest. The feeling would be anything but pleasant. Euphoberia lived in dense, swampy forests where the ground was covered with decaying leaves, moss, and fallen trees. They were predators, fast-moving, lurking in the dark, and striking suddenly with venomous curved claws to subdue their prey. Their victims likely included small insects, larvae, or even juvenile amphibians. Paleontologists believe that Euphoberia was among the first mid-level predators in ancient forest ecosystems, not the absolute ruler, but a terror to anything smaller. What made Euphoberia especially distinct from its modern relatives was its complex body structure. Fossil evidence shows that each body segment not only bore spines, but also had hard, bony ridges that increased its defensive strength. Some individuals even possessed a metallic-like sheen that reflected light. serving both as armor and as camouflage in the sun-dappled forest floor. Its long, flexible body and dozens of legs allowed it to move swiftly across uneven terrain, like a miniature armored tank. Yet, despite its fearsome appearance, Euphoberia was not a reckless hunter. Its venom was only potent enough to paralyze small prey, not to harm larger creatures. When threatened, it would curl itself into a tight coil, hiding its head in the center and exposing its spiny armor. A defensive tactic still used by many millipedes today. You could say that Euphoberia was one of the earliest blueprints of a survival strategy combining speed and defense, an evolutionary design that has remained effective for hundreds of millions of years. If Meganeura ruled the skies and Euphoberia dominated the ground, then under the mist and pale moonlight of the Carboniferous period, another creature was crawling slowly, one that could silence the entire forest with its presence. With a body nearly 70 centimeters long, massive curved pincers and a venomous tail, Pulmonoscorpius, the prehistoric giant scorpion, was the perfect embodiment of terror. Fossils of Pulmonoscorpius discovered in Scotland show that it lived in the early Carboniferous period, around 330 million years ago. At over 28 inches in length, it was among the largest scorpions ever to walk the earth. Its body structure closely resembled that of modern scorpions, except for its enormous proportions. And one key difference: its remarkably developed eyes. This feature led scientists to believe that Pulmonoscorpius hunted primarily by sight, unlike modern scorpions which rely on sensing vibrations. That also means it was an active predator. Rather than waiting in ambush, Pulmonoscorpius could actively search for and chase down prey using its agile claws and venomous tail. Although we cannot know exactly how potent its venom was, nature offers a clue. Scorpions with smaller pincers and thicker tails typically possess the most powerful toxins. Pulmonoscorpius, with its relatively small claws and heavy tail, likely could kill its prey with a single sting. Its diet probably included large insects, young amphibians, or even giant centipedes like Euphoberia, which roamed the forest floor. Once its prey was paralyzed, Pulmonoscorpius would tear it apart with its strong pincers and crush it with mouth parts shaped like tiny blades. It was a perfect hunting cycle, carried out in silence and shadow. Despite its terrifying appearance, Pulmonoscorpius was not an invincible giant killer. Its greatest enemy didn't come from the ground, it came from the changing climate. As Earth became drier and oxygen levels dropped, its massive body turned from an advantage into a burden. The scorpion's respiratory system, dependent on small air tubes, could no longer deliver enough oxygen to sustain such size, leading to its gradual extinction and the rise of smaller, better adapted descendants. Even more astonishing, Pulmonoscorpius may have been among the first scorpions to live entirely on land, possessing a book-lung structure, a primitive respiratory organ that allowed it to absorb oxygen directly from the air. This made it an evolutionary bridge between the ancient sea scorpions and the later fully terrestrial species. While the armored giants still ruled the depths of ancient oceans, on land another empire was rising. A world of humid jungles and endless coal swamps stretching to the horizon. And in the midst of that landscape, the dominant creature was neither dinosaur nor reptile, but a massive centipede the length of a car. Its name was Arthropleura, meaning jointed body, a perfect symbol of arthropod power in the Carboniferous period more than 300 million years ago. Arthropleura was the largest land-dwelling invertebrate ever to exist, reaching lengths of up to 2.7 meters and weighing around 50 kilograms. Its body was divided into dozens of segments, each bearing 2 legs, a total of 30 pairs moving rhythmically to propel its enormous frame forward. Despite its monstrous appearance, surprisingly, Arthropleura was entirely herbivorous. Evidence for this comes from well-preserved fossils, in which scientists found traces of fern spores inside its gut. It turns out this giant merely wandered through the forests, feeding on fallen leaves, moss, and soft plant stems. However, gentle did not mean weak. The entire body of Arthropleura was covered by thick chitin plates arranged like sheets of armor. This exoskeleton not only protected it from physical impact, but also served as a shield against any predator daring enough to attack. In a world of small insects and amphibians, no creature was strong enough to pierce such armor. A particularly fascinating theory among paleontologists suggests that Arthropleura may have helped forests reproduce, much like bees and butterflies do today. As it crawled through ferns and moss, millions of plant spores clung to its armor and legs, later falling off in new locations, spreading life across the land. Thus, though it looked like a monstrous crawler, Arthropleura was in fact Earth's first giant gardener. If you're afraid of spiders, this next part may send chills down your spine, because Mongolarachne jurassica was not just an ancient spider, but the so-called giant queen of the Jurassic era, an arachnid so extraordinary it shocked the scientific world upon discovery. What made this species terrifying was not just its size, but the eerie perfection of its natural design. The body of Mongolarachne measured about 6 centimeters long, with a leg span reaching 20 centimeters, roughly the width of an adult's outstretched hand. Even the thought of such a creature crawling across one's shoulder is enough to make most people shudder. But even more remarkable, fossil evidence suggests that its silk structure was equal to, or even stronger than, that of modern spiders. If it were alive today, the web of Mongolarachne could likely hold an entire small bird or bat. Scientists believe Mongolarachne jurassica was an ambush predator, similar to modern orb-weaving spiders. What set it apart, however, was its instinctive intelligence. It could calculate where to place its web, adjust tension to optimize trapping efficiency, and perhaps even cast nets like some present-day species. In other words, hundreds of millions of years ago, nature had already programmed this creature with a level of precision and planning we now attempt to replicate with robots. Yet one mystery makes Mongolarachne even more fascinating: its extreme sexual dimorphism. Like many modern spiders, the females were vastly larger than the males. This has led to a chilling hypothesis. After mating, the female may have consumed the male as a way to replenish energy for reproduction. A brutal but deeply natural behavior, eat to survive, that has existed for hundreds of millions of years. As for its habitat, Mongolarachne lived in humid forests near ancient swamps and lakes, where the oxygen-rich air and stable temperatures allowed it to grow to such enormous size. Its compound eyes allowed it to see clearly even in dim light, while its silk, nearly invisible, ensured that prey only realized the danger when it was far too late. With all these advantages, it's no surprise that Mongolarachne was once the terror of the Jurassic era, a silent predator that no insect or small reptile ever wanted to encounter. When we think of prehistoric giants, we usually picture dinosaurs or massive flying insects. Few imagine that the tiny ants around us today once had ancestors as large as a hummingbird. But that's the truth. And their name says it all: Titanomyrma, meaning giant ant. The body of Titanomyrma could reach up to 6 centimeters in length, about 20 times larger than a modern ant, with a wingspan over 15 centimeters, nearly the size of a small bird. Some fossil specimens show that the queens may have weighed more than an adult hummingbird, ruling over colonies of hundreds of thousands of individuals. Unlike today's small and fragile ants, Titanomyrma were true warriors. Their jaws were large, saw-edged, and razor-sharp, powerful enough to tear apart larger insects, and even attack small vertebrates. Like modern ants, Titanomyrma hunted in coordinated swarms, surrounding prey, injecting venom, and dismembering the carcass to carry back to the nest. Such an assault was swift, merciless, and precise, much like the military tactics humans would develop millions of years later. It's hard to believe that tens of millions of years ago, The ancient forests of Europe once echoed with the rustling of thousands of ant legs as hordes of Titanomyrma marched through, turning every small creature in their path into a feast of living flesh. Nothing escaped, not beetles, not larvae, and sometimes even an unfortunate early lizard. Some scientists believe Titanomyrma was the first ant species to migrate across continents, back when Earth's land masses were still connected through the warm region of Greenland. Their fossils have been found in both Germany and Wyoming, United States, evidence that these creatures once crossed the ancient North Atlantic, a journey spanning thousands of kilometers. That also means they were not only giants in size, but also pioneers in evolution. But like every natural empire, Titanomyrma could not withstand the planet's shifting climate. As the Earth cooled, rainforests disappeared, and cold seasons emerged, their massive bodies could no longer adapt to lower temperatures. A large body demands immense energy, and as food became scarce, the empire of the giant ants collapsed. They went extinct, leaving behind the tiny descendants we know today, ants just a few millimeters long, yet still carrying in their blood the fighting instinct of their ancient Titanomyrma ancestors. From dragonflies the size of eagles, centipedes as long as cars, to sea scorpions that could look you in the eye. Giant creatures once ruled this planet for hundreds of millions of years. And then they all vanished. Not because of a single meteor or sudden disaster, but through a slow, devastating series of global changes. Back in the Carboniferous and Permian periods, Earth's atmosphere contained record levels of oxygen, more than 30% compared to only 21% today. The air was so dense that a single spark could ignite an entire forest. But that oxygen-rich environment was also the golden key that allowed giant insects to be born. Insects breathe through a system of tiny tubes called tracheae, where oxygen diffuses directly into the body instead of being absorbed through lungs. When oxygen levels were abundant, they could easily grow to extraordinary sizes. That's why Meganeura could have a wingspan of 1 meter, and Arthropleura, weighing dozens of kilograms, could still move swiftly. But every age of prosperity comes with a price. About 252 million years ago, Earth witnessed the Great Dying, the Permian-Triassic extinction event, when more than 90% of marine species and 70% of land species were wiped out. Massive volcanoes in Siberia erupted for millions of years, heating the planet, acidifying the oceans, and reducing atmospheric oxygen to only 15%. For the giant insects, it was a death sentence. Their tracheal systems could no longer supply enough oxygen for such large bodies, and they suffocated in the very world that had once sustained them. Smaller, more adaptable creatures, the ancestors of ants, flies, and bees, thrived instead. When the giants fell, the age of the small began. But the drop in oxygen wasn't the only factor. As carnivorous reptiles, amphibians, and fish evolved jaws, they became faster, smarter, and more efficient hunters with superior respiration. The giant insects lost their shelters, their food sources, and eventually their place in the struggle for survival. A true biological revolution unfolded, where the slow and massive were replaced by the quick and intelligent. At the same time, plants changed too. The swampy forests of the Carboniferous, once filled with giant ferns reaching tens of meters high, gradually vanished as the climate turned drier. New forests of smaller gymnosperms no longer provided enough nourishment for large herbivorous species. Without food, they had no choice but to shrink or die out. Then came the flying predators, birds and bats, transforming the sky, once ruled by giant dragonflies, into a deadly battlefield. Meganeura, once soaring freely, now became a floating meal in mid-air. Nature was no longer a playground for giants, but a battlefield for adaptation. At last, after millions of years of chaos, Earth entered a new state of balance. The ecosystem no longer needed giants. Modern ecology favors the small, the agile, and the diverse. Millions of tiny species sharing the world through countless ecological niches. The law of evolution is cruel but fair. It is not the strongest who survive, but those who adapt best. And so the era of the giants came to an end, giving rise to the world we see today, where the small creatures reign over the planet. Perhaps those ancient giants have vanished, but their traces remain, in every fragment of fossil, in the whisper of wind through ancient forests. And who knows? Deep beneath the ground or in the dark depths of the ocean, there may still be a creature unseen by humankind, silently waiting for the day the world discovers its existence.